The Notre Dame-USC game is always a big deal, but this year it feels massive. The playoff stakes, the future of the rivalry in doubt, the Chad Bowden drama, and CJ Carr has a chance to become a Notre Dame legend on Saturday. We're covering all that and more on today's Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily home for Notre Dame football. I'm your host, Tyler Wojciak. I'm a Notre Dame alum, producer at Fox Sports, and I've been covering the Irish since 2020. It's Thursday, October 16th, and thanks for getting your day started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. And before we get rolling, be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube or follow wherever you get your podcast so that way you never miss an episode. And we all know it's a massive week. The Notre Dame-USC game always has a ton of juice, and the energy around this one feels enormous. We have been talking about it all week on the show. There are major playoff implications for both teams, history on the line, and yes, a little drama added in. And today, I'm going to be joined by a fellow Southern California resident, Greg Flammang from Irish Sports Daily, to break it down even further. We're going to get into how Notre Dame matches up with USC on both sides of the ball, what to expect from CJ Carr in his first start in this rivalry game, and whether the Chad Bowden storyline matters inside the locker rooms. We're also going to take a look at Marcus Freeman's approach this week and give our game predictions at the end. Let's bring in Greg. All right, I'm joined now by Greg Flammang from Irish Sports Daily. And Greg, you and I both reside in enemy territory out here in Southern California. Now, you've been here your whole life. I've only been here for a little over 4 years now. And I got to say, this rivalry definitely hits different when you're surrounded by Trojan fans every single day. And before we dive into the matchup, I just want to ask, how would you describe your emotions going into this game, knowing how much is on the line for Notre Dame this season and all the uncertainty about the future of this rivalry?
Yeah, this game definitely makes me nervous. It kind of always does. It's just something that's in the air with Notre Dame and USC. I think particularly because both teams are pretty good this year, and USC is pretty good. Obviously, they dropped the game to Illinois, but last weekend was really impressive for them, the way that they kind of beat up Michigan. I did not expect it to go that way. Although I don't know how good Michigan is, but I think they have a very explosive offense. They have a good running game. They've had a good running game all year. Mekhi Lemon might win the Biletnikoff Award at wide receiver. And the defense isn't as good as they probably would hope. So that gives me some good feelings about what Notre Dame can do against them, especially in the passing game. But I always get nervous about this game. We probably talked the same way last year, especially with Notre Dame going to LA, and that was obviously a good performance, but it's USC and it's the rivalry, and it's just, there's a lot of feelings for me that go back to when I was like 11 years old. So very, very, very hard.
I don't blame you. And you and I have talked about this before. Like, there was a point during my childhood where I thought Notre Dame was never going to beat USC. And even though Notre Dame has sort of dominated the rivalry over the past decade plus, like, I'm always going to be nervous going into the game against USC, especially with so much at stake and with no long-term contract in place and the real possibility that Notre Dame and USC might not play every year moving forward. Like, how much pressure does that add to this matchup for you and also the teams involved, obviously?
Yeah, I don't really feel it any kind of way, to be honest, in a way that I'm kind of surprised by. I thought it would take it a little bit more personal, but I really don't. Like, it's just one of those things. Like, USC to me is they're kind of moving in a direction that makes them unrecognizable to me. And I think we've kind of talked about this a little bit. So losing the rivalry, so to speak, it's already, in my mind, I think it's already kind of lost with the way that USC is kind of going about their business. Talking about private equity now. There's leaks in the paper about they want to take the series to Netflix some kind of way, play the game in Mexico City. Like, what is going on? You know, they are going in a direction that I don't really understand. So to me, the pageantry around the rivalry in that sense is kind of gone. Or it's kind of going away. So, I still get that that feeling in my stomach, like whenever I imagine hearing that music and hearing the band and all that and seeing those colors out there, like that still exists. But when I think of them on a day-to-day basis, it's just a little bit different. Like I don't view them the same way. The Chad thing is interesting just because of, the history there. Although I think that's more of a fan thing. I don't think the players care one way or the other. So I think that's more of a fan, like internet Twitter thing. But it is there. Like you are asking me, and I do communicate with fans. So it is something that kind of resonates over the game certainly for the fan bases.
I do want to get to the Chad thing later on, but as it pertains to my emotions going into this game with no long-term future set in stone right now, for one thing, I am optimistic that something is going to get resolved. It might look different. It might be in September every single year. They might play at a neutral site, as much as that disgusts me, to be honest. If it's on Netflix, like whatever. But I actually feel so much more pressure about this game because it does kind of feel like this last iteration of the rivalry that you and I have grown up with and so many others have lived through. So I really, really want Notre Dame to win this game for all the obvious reasons, but also I don't want to deal with another situation like Michigan where, let's be honest, they hold the belt and they won in pretty embarrassing fashion back in 2019. And the fact that that still lingers on my mind today, I really just don't want to be in the same situation with USC.
That would be awful. That would be very bad. I would not enjoy that at all. So at least that game was, it was on the road. It was at Michigan. So Notre Dame is at home for this one. So I don't see a repeat of that. Different kind of programs too. So, but that definitely, that possibility hangs in the air, and it's not a good feeling to think about for sure.
Yeah. Or Notre Dame could be on the other end of that, especially considering there is rain in the forecast. So maybe Notre Dame will be on the good side this time around. But let's dive into the matchup, and I want to start with USC's offense. They are not at full strength. They lost their leading running back to injury and dealt with attrition at wide receiver in the transfer portal. When I was watching that Virginia-Florida State game a couple weeks ago, I was blown away by how good Deuce Robinson is now. And I was thinking, man, it's a good thing he's no longer on USC, because I think last year he only had 2 catches against Notre Dame, but there were some big time plays. So he is gone. Yeah. And yet they are still very dangerous with quarterback Jayden Maiava. And like you said, Mekhi Lemon, who might win the Blitnikoff Award this year for the best wide receiver in the country. So what is your biggest concern about the USC offense and how Notre Dame might try to defend them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you kind of start with the star, Mekhi Lemon. He's one of the best wide receivers in the country, so he's kind of where it begins. I think when you think about, like, I always think about the running game. They're down two of their top running backs. They're out for certainly for this game, one out for the year, one out for an extended period of time. They're also down their center, and they might be without their left tackle, Elijah Page, as well. They were without all those. Yes, sir. They were without all those players last week, though, and they ran all over Michigan. So you got to take that into consideration. Lincoln Riley has a way of, they don't really need to run at you per se. They can influence the defensive line. They can influence the linebackers to get them leaning a certain kind of way, and then they can leverage the offensive line and get them into good positions. And they can kind of scheme their way into explosives, and that's the thing that really concerns me about defending USC this year, especially with the way that Notre Dame's playing their linebackers. In the run game, the linebackers have not, and this has been consistent. We talk a lot about, the improvements that Notre Dame's made on defense, and they obviously have, and especially in their numbers and everything. But the way that they're playing their linebackers has been consistent, especially in the running game. They're not as attacking. They're not as moving forward. And if they sit back and wait for USC, and USC out leverages them, USC can make it so the numbers are not in your favor in the box, and those running backs can get a full head of steam, and they're running into the secondary and things like that. So, when I think about stopping USC, I think about stopping their running game, but not just their running game, the explosives in their running game and the explosives in the passing game as well, right? That was how USC really gashed Notre Dame last year, is they hit a bunch of explosives. It was specifically in the passing game. It wasn't so much in the running game last year, and that was obviously to Notre Dame's benefit. They got to be able to do it again this year, because the explosives are the thing that Lincoln Riley kind of thrives on, and that's when he gets you on, on your heels and everything. That's when it makes it very, very difficult to stop them.
It's classic USC where they lose their top two running backs and then they get a walk-on from Calabasas named King Miller who goes for 158 yards on 18 carries. He had a long of 49, and that's against the Michigan defense who, say what you will about their offense, but traditionally Michigan has had a really good defense even in their down years. And you brought up last year's game. Like, that was wild because Notre Dame's defense had dominated every single team that they came across for the entire season up until that point. And even though Notre Dame won by 2 touchdowns, they still gave up 35 points in that game, even though one of those touchdowns came pretty late in garbage time. But still, USC moved the ball throughout the game. What do you think are the biggest lessons that Marcus Freeman, Chris Ash, even though he wasn't there, and also this defense as a whole, what lessons can they take from last year when preparing for this matchup?
Yeah, so there was a time after the game, Al Golden talked about how he made some mistakes with the calls that he made and coverages and everything. I think they would have played a lot less man last year, and I think that's interesting given that Chris Ash was kind of brought in to introduce more zone defense. I wonder if that's going to be something that we see a little bit more, even than Notre Dame did has done throughout the season. Because USC is very good at man beaters. They're good at their screen game. They're good at getting blocks. They're good at, cracking and replacing with their tight ends on pitch pass or pitch plays to the running back. We saw that last year a couple of times where they were able to do that. Got Notre Dame on some screens as well. If Notre Dame's going to play a little bit more zone, that kind of takes that stuff away when you're not being influenced by a wide receiver cracking on the linebacker. So I think that might be the thing. I think it might be a little bit less man in this game. Obviously there's a lot of talk about putting Leonard Moore on Mekhi Lemon in the slot. And if they do that, then you're kind of identifying the coverage, right? Like if you put Leonard Moore on Mekhi Lemon, then you're going to play man. There's no point in putting Leonard Moore in the slot and having him play the flat or play hook to curl or whatever it might be. So you're going to be a man coverage. You don't really want to identify the coverage scheme on your defense when you're playing a Lincoln Riley team. So I think they're going to change things up. I think they're going to, I think Chris Ash wants to try to win with 4. I think that's a good thing against this team specifically. Obviously, we've seen a lot better play from Boubacar Traore the last couple of weeks. You want to get Junior Tuihalamaka involved, right? Like he's a former USC guy. You want to get KVA involved, right? KVA is going to be very motivated. Remember, he didn't get to play against USC last year. He hurt his knee against Army, so he missed the game. He's going to be very, very motivated in this game. If there was ever a time where you want to give KVA like 95% of the snaps, Saturday is the time for that.
Greg is going to be right back with us in a moment to look back on the wild game between Notre Dame and USC last season and what the Irish need to learn from that going into Saturday. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about SupplyHouse. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with SupplyHouse. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for a project? SupplyHouse has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer. The Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Their Trademaster perks like priority shipping and dedicated support make the whole process smoother. Join the free Trademaster program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit SupplyHouse.com to sign up for free and use promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That's SupplyHouse.com. Real people, real service. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. We've been talking about it all week on the show. Thursday Night Football tonight. Bengals hosting the Steelers. I like the Bengals to cover 5.5. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. It's really crazy to think back to that game last year because Notre Dame was in control for pretty much the entire game up until that drive when USC had the ball. They're going in. They have a chance to tie the game late in the fourth quarter. Then Christian Gray gets that interception return for a touchdown. I'm looking at the stats right now. USC outgained Notre Dame 557 to 436. Like, they really moved the ball all game. And you're right, they were getting beat on a lot of explosive plays, and Christian Gray in particular. Gray has been playing a lot better as of late. Leonard Moore has been terrific ever since he's been healthy. But Notre Dame might be without starting nickel Devontae Smith. We're recording this on Tuesday night, so maybe there's more news that comes out. Maybe he's officially out. Maybe he's going to try to give it a go. Either way, Freeman did say that they would consider moving Leonard Moore into the slot, but I'm with you. I think that's kind of coach speak. I don't think it's a real option. However, they definitely have to have a plan in place to try to contain Makai Lemon because he plays a lot in the slot. He also goes out to the field. And even if Devontae Smith is able to go, that poses a big problem for the Notre Dame defense. So, like, what do you think Notre Dame should try to do in order to try to slow down Lemon?
Yeah, so personally, I don't expect Devontae Smith to play. We'll hear from Marcus Freeman on Thursday and see if there's an update to his status. But I think Makai Lemon is good enough to the point where you'd have to have a plan for him anyway, right? It'd be one thing if Notre Dame had a nickel the caliber of, like, let's say Leonard Moore, where it was like you stick him on him and you feel like, okay, we're confident with him. Makai Lemon is better than Devontae Smith. He's better than Dallas Golden. Notre Dame's going to have a plan anyway. So I think you'd rather have Devontae Smith on him because of the physical aspect of it. Like, they're both built similarly. Dallas Golden still has that freshman build to him. So that's going to make it difficult, but Notre Dame will have to have a plan. I think that if they're in 11 personnel, I think they are going to have Leonard Moore in man coverage against whoever it might be, and they're going to bracket Makai Lemon with either the nickel and then another safety who's sitting over top of them, or he's they're bracketing inside outside with Makai Lemon. I think that's going to be the plan. They might just zone him up. They might play zone away from Leonard Moore, who's just in man. They might do a bunch of things. I do think, though, and this is going to be an interesting thing to track throughout the game. USC's been in 12 personnel 34% of the time in 2025. That's more than Notre Dame. Notre Dame's been in 12 personnel 28% of the time. That was going into last weekend. So that's to Notre Dame's benefit. Notre Dame wants to play their linebackers ahead of their nickel. Like, if they can play three linebackers more often than they're playing their nickel in this game, that is to their benefit. And if they are in 12 and there's only two wide receivers on the field, that's when I'm comfortable with putting Leonard Moore on Makai Lemon.
In that instance, yeah.
Yeah. That's when I would shadow him. If there's only two wide receivers on the field, then that's exactly what I would do. But if there's three, then that's a little bit different story. So that's going to be something interesting to follow, how much USC's in two tight ends, because they've been in two tight ends a lot this year. And it's been a good formation for them. So they've been effective. But against Notre Dame in particular, it kind of works into Notre Dame's benefit for the way they want to play defense.
It's part of the chess match, right? Because USC has had a lot of success because they have two really talented tight ends in Lake McCree and Walker Lyons. They're good in blocking, but they're also really good as pass catchers as well. So they could lean into that, but like you said, that sort of plays into what Notre Dame wants to do. So would they be willing, they being USC, to sort of go back to 11 personnel, get Makai Lemon in the slot, and try to take advantage of whoever Notre Dame has out there at nickel? Personally, I think Notre Dame should just try to do whatever they can to contain him, because this offense without their star running backs kind of reminds me of that group they had in 2021 when they had Keaton Slovis at quarterback and Drake London at wide receiver.
Yeah.
And I always find it funny to bring up that game because I remember watching Drake London going like, is this the best wide receiver of all time? Greg, as a reminder, in that game, Drake London had 15 catches, 171 yards. Their next most productive wide receiver was Malcolm Epps, who had 2 catches for 38 yards. And in that game, USC only scored 16 points. So Notre Dame had no answer for London, but they were able to contain him. And if they're able to do that with Makai Lemon, I think they'll be in good shape. But before we switch over to the other side of the ball, what is the single biggest key for Notre Dame defensively in this game?
I think it's limiting explosives. Yeah, you don't want to give up those big plays. I mean, how did they give up their touchdown on Saturday? They gave up a long pass out of the slot, right? So that's the quickest way to points. And I think that was Notre Dame's Achilles heel last year against USC. They gave up a bunch of explosives. They gave up a bunch of over top balls. You don't want to do that, right? So if they can limit explosives to USC, both in the pass game and the run game, like that's the biggest key. I mean, it's a big deal against every team, but USC is the type of team that they want to hit big. And so you got to prevent that stuff.
Okay, on the flip side, USC's defense has not exactly been known for their physicality in the last few years, or really at any point in the past couple of decades, really. But they did look much improved last week against Michigan. How much do you buy into their growth on defense, especially in the second year under defensive coordinator Dan Tonlin, versus how much Michigan just struggled offensively? Because to me, Michigan is just very, very bad on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
I know they have Bryce Underwood and they have some talented running backs, but they just looked so out of sorts from really the opening kick.
What they don't have is good wide receivers, and that's kind of the Achilles heel for USC, right? I think USC has a good defensive line, and I think with especially their ends, and I think they've got Eric Gentry, who's going to be healthy for this game. He's very, very important for them. Like if you go back and look at him in the lineup and him out of the lineup, like they are very different on defense. So having Eric Gentry available for this game is a huge deal for USC. Like he's just kind of a playmaker. And he always has been. I mean, he was a big problem for Notre Dame in the 2022 game, right? So he didn't play last year because he had gotten a concussion. So he did the 4-game, redshirt thing. And so he came back to USC this year, and he's healthy for this one. They're not very good in the secondary. They've got Kamari Ramsey, who's a good safety, but their corners aren't very good. And when you can't challenge them, then that's a little bit, that makes it hard, right? And that's something that Michigan could not do. Luke Altmaier of Illinois threw the ball all over USC. I mean, he shredded USC. Illinois was on the way to like boat racing USC.
Yeah, they had 2 fumbles in the end zone, basically.
Yeah. Basically, like going into the end zone, they had 2 fumbles, right? And so that kind of bailed out USC's defense. Obviously, Notre Dame's had some stuff where they've kind of shot themselves in the foot this year. So if that continues to happen, that could allow USC to be in this game from a defensive standpoint. But there are avenues available for Notre Dame to hurt USC, especially with their nickel as well. And Will Pauling has been a revelation the last couple of games. You figure he's going to have a good matchup in this one. You figure Malachi Fields is going to have a good matchup in this one. CJ Carr has been dicing up teams. I feel good about Notre Dame being able to move the ball in the pass game. And here's the other part, right? If teams try to take away the running game, like they did, like that's what NC State did. Right, 162 yards for 160, or maybe it was 152 yards. 152 yards for Price and Love combined last week on 33 carries, which like obviously isn't great yards per carry, but that forced NC State to commit extra players just to hold them to those numbers. And look what happened in the passing game. CJ Carr throws for 342 yards. He's throwing for over 11 yards per attempt. Like he is hurting teams when they decide we want to send an extra defender into the box to ensure that Love and Price don't hit the big one that costs you on the back end. USC is going to have to make that decision. If they decide wrong and they decide the wrong way, if they want to commit more players to the back and prevent those explosives, now you can just hand the ball to Price and Love and they can hit you for an explosive. So Notre Dame has really put teams in a bind. I was talking to someone earlier today about this year's game. And I was saying on paper, Notre Dame's offense is better than last year's offense. As good as it was, and as efficient as Notre Dame was in the game against USC. Basically, they moved the ball on every drive with the exception of the last 2. And the yardage disparity comes from the fact that like Notre Dame doesn't get credit for 100 yards of interception returns, right? So that hurts, but they're scoring points on those. Notre Dame's offense is very, very difficult to defend in 2025. And when a team has a weakness like USC does in the secondary, it leaves them vulnerable to some big points.
And Notre Dame is equipped to take advantage of that because they have CJ Carr. And this is Carr's first start in the Notre Dame-USC rivalry. And I've said all week, this is his moment. Like I'm about to get my Bill Simmons on and say, is CJ Carr having a moment? Well, he's about to on Saturday, or at least he has a great opportunity to, because he's been playing really well all season long. The hype around him is building nationally. And now he has a massive stage against a top 25 opponent and a defense that has struggled to defend the pass. So what are your expectations for CJ Carr on Saturday night?
Well, we saw him perform against Miami in the Orange Bowl there, or at the side of the Orange Bowl in Miami. We saw him perform at home in a huge game against Texas A&M, which was a very good defense. He's going to be able to perform in this game. I'm not worried about him from a mental standpoint. It's just Notre Dame's offense has to cut down on the things that have beaten themselves. Penalties, drop passes, poor play calls on poor play calls on fourth down, missing passes when people are running wide open, like little things in the moment, fumbling inside the red zone, right? Mistakes. Like Notre Dame has had self-inflicted errors kind of in the last couple of games and in other moments during the year. It's become a trend for them, and they need to clean that up. If they can clean that up, I don't see how USC stops them, truly. Like there's CJ Carr has been too efficient. He's too good of a passer. The other part is he's so good against the blitz. He makes very good decisions against the blitz. He knows where to go. He can check into a play that's a winner for Notre Dame. That's the thing that you don't really see with young quarterbacks. He's not someone you really want to heat up because he can get into a play that beats you. And so we haven't really seen teams have a bunch of success heating up CJ Carr this year. That's another thing that makes him very difficult. Like you got to hope that Notre Dame just gets into the wrong play call against the wrong defense. That's how they've been stopped this year. And that's what you got to hope for, because if you try to force the issue against CJ Carr, he will beat you, and he's done it week after week.
I'm so excited to see what he can do because, like I said, everything has been building towards this. But the interesting component about this quarterback battle between Carr and Jayden Maiava is, has Jayden Maiava ever played in a game as big as this one? I mean, the game against Michigan last week was pretty big, certainly probably the biggest home game that he's played. But you think about CJ Carr, he's only started 6 games, but they include a top 5 game on the road, a huge home game in prime time against Texas A&M, who's now a top 5 team in the country. So he's basically used to this, going up against USC on another big stage, whereas like Jayden Maiava didn't play in one game that really mattered last season because they were out of it by October. And this year, I mean, that Michigan game was a big deal, but I just think that Carr is going to be used to this, and I actually trust him more just to be able to handle the situation mentally compared to Jayden Maiava, which is shocking because Carr's only a redshirt freshman, and Jayden Maiava has been playing college football for several years now.
Right, and you figured, as big as that game was for USC, I mean, what is that, a 3/4 full stadium? If we want to be generous. A lot of
Michigan fans?
Yeah, like, it's different, right? And even the Illinois game, like obviously that's a big game. It's at what is it, 11 a.m.?
Yeah, exactly.
Central time. Like it's an 11 a.m. kick.
Against a team who just got throttled by 50.
Right. Like it just carries a different kind of thing. Like this is Notre Dame and Notre Dame Stadium at night, right? In prime time. So to your point, like it is the biggest game, certainly. I mean, they played Notre Dame last year, but obviously USC was 6-5 or whatever it was. There were no stakes for USC in that game, right? For this one, there's a ton of stakes for USC. There's a ton of stakes for Notre Dame. I mean, it is the most charged up atmosphere that he's ever played in to date. I don't know what kind of atmosphere the bowl game was against Texas A&M, but this is going to outmatch that, certainly. Especially like people are very excited about this. It's something that I've kind of picked up over the week is people are jacked up for this game. I think that crowd is going to be live. Here, the part of this too, I think Notre Dame fans are super jacked up for this. I don't know how jacked up USC fans are to travel out to Notre Dame, especially when the weather might be a little bit, shaky. You're looking at the forecast. It might be rainy. It might be wet. It might be cold. I don't know that there's going to be a barnstorming of USC fans heading out to South Bend this year. No one's really excited about this program right now. I mean, you look at, like you said last week, half the stadium is Michigan fans, and that's a huge game. USC is only sitting there with 1 loss. So there's not a lot of juice around USC right now. Notre Dame fans are engaged. This is a must-win game. I mean, if A&M was must-win, this is must-win. They cannot lose this game and have any hope of reaching the playoffs. So Notre Dame's got to win this one. And so it's going to be jacked up in South Bend on Saturday.
Yeah, I have really high expectations for the crowd on Saturday. I can't wait. I mean, it's Tuesday, and I'm struggling to get through the day because all I can think about is how excited I am to be in that stadium on Saturday night at 7:30. And look, the crowd has its issues. I've heard from a couple people who were at the last 2 games against NC State and Boise State. It was really sleepy, but it was always like, yeah, I'm going to make it to the USC game. So everything is building towards this game. Greg is going to be right back here with us in a moment to break down where Notre Dame has the biggest edge going up against USC's defense. And then we're going to dive into some of the off-the-field drama surrounding this game. But before we get to that, here's a word from Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail. Because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda. Move and be moved. When you look at the matchup between Notre Dame on offense going up against USC's defense, like last year, Notre Dame ran all over them. They finished with 258 rushing yards, 6.8 yards per carry. But now Notre Dame is going to be without starting center Ashton Craig for the rest of this season. So I don't know how much they're going to try to lean into the run. They're going to run frequently, obviously, with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. But you never really know what you're going to get with this Notre Dame offense. So where do you think they have the biggest edge going against the Trojans?
On offense, I mean, it's certainly their wide receivers against their DBs. I mean, it's 100%. Like I said, I like SC's front seven to the extent that they have Eric Gentry, and I like their interior players. I like their edge players. Like they've got some dudes up front, but not so in the secondary. And to the extent that I like their front seven or front four or whatever it might be. I mean, they're not obviously. They're not Ruben Bain and Mesador from Miami. They're not Cassius Howell, and they're not Cassius Howell from Texas A&M. I mean, Notre Dame has faced players who are better than what USC has. They're good players, but they're not the caliber of the players they've already faced. So I think Notre Dame. I don't expect USC to shut down Notre Dame by any stretch of the imagination. It's just more of a strength for them. Notre Dame has a distinct advantage outside. They can win with Will Pauling. They can win with Jordan Faison. They can win with Malachi Fields. They can win with Eli Raridan against those safeties, right? It'd be interesting. I mean, if they have Eric Gentry in coverage against Eli Raridan, that's a little bit different because Eric Gentry is very tall. He's very long. But I'd personally rather have Eric Gentry covering Eli Raridan than getting after the quarterback. So that would be a fair trade for Notre Dame on that front.
Run a seam, Eli.
You have Jeremiah Love in the passing game, right? And look, here's something else that I've kind of picked up the way Notre Dame does things. Obviously they take every game seriously. Notre Dame's got a plan for USC. Notre Dame has both offensively and defensively. Mike Denbrock has a plan for USC. He knows what they're doing, and they've installed things specific for USC that I think we're going to see. They're going to be very, very interesting.
I think a wrinkle we're going to see, and we've been waiting for it. We've talked. It's always a fall camp talking point. I think we're going to see a lot of 21 personnel.
Okay.
I mean, I know we talk about it every year, and it just never really happens. They toy with it, but how funny would it be? They did it against Ohio State a lot in 2023. Now, granted, that was Jared Parker, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. They saved that for that game, and it really worked for them. That was Jeremiah Love's breakout game as a true freshman. So I'm calling it now. We're going to see Price and Love on the field way more than we have all season long. But look, there's always been plenty of bad blood in this rivalry. This year, it feels extra personal, at least from the fans, because of all the Chad Bowden drama. We talked about it at the beginning of this. But do you think his move to USC adds any legitimate tension between the staffs? Because I'm with you. I don't think the players really care all that much. But look, Marcus Freeman is a really competitive guy. And there were several Notre Dame coaches who were in Chad Bowden's wedding, and then he leaves, and then he has all these passive-aggressive comments about Notre Dame and why he decided to leave to go to USC, all this stuff. So is that a legitimate storyline, in your opinion? Do you think that's something that Marcus Freeman has ever discussed with the staff, or is this all just for people outside the building?
Honestly, I don't think – I think because of all the talk about ending the series, I think that is what takes precedence over anything with Chad Bowden. I think without the series hanging in the balance and the way that USC's been talking about this series – I think if that didn't exist, then Chad would be a bigger storyline. But USC's trying to get out of the series. And I think that is something that Marcus Freeman is going to lean into. And I think, honestly, I do think the staff will take that a little bit personal. Just why are you trying to end this? You don't want to play us. Are you afraid of us or whatever it might be? It's not that USC actually is afraid of Notre Dame or whatever, but they can push that button. They can play that up, right? That's what sports is. It's creating these adversarial situations to what you can take advantage of. I think that's what Marcus Freeman is going to lean on. And I think that's what they feel. I think if anything, there's animosity towards Lincoln Riley for that. Like, I mean, we all know what it was like with Marcus Freeman and James Franklin.
Yeah.
Like that was a huge thing, right? Because the way he spoke about Notre Dame, like Lincoln Riley speaks about Notre Dame in the sense of like, he doesn't say they need to join a conference, but it's always like they need to, like, it's always in a way that's like, it's an implied criticism of Notre Dame because they're not in a conference. Well, we are in a conference. We have to look out for ourselves and this, that, and the other. And so I think that Notre Dame feels some kind of way about that. And I think that's going to be a factor in this, whether it's a positive or negative, I don't know, but I think it's going to be a pretty big factor.
Yeah. So how do you think Marcus Freeman is going to approach this game? Because he has been great at getting his teams ready for big games like this one. And they don't really get much bigger than this when you consider all the stakes involved. But we've seen him get real fiery like he did before the Texas A&M game at the beginning of last season. I saw him getting after it with his guys right before they came out of the tunnel against Boise State a couple weeks ago. But then there have been some instances, even in big games, where he has more of a subdued approach. So what are you expecting from Marcus Freeman and the way he's going to approach this game with his team?
I think it's going to be the do or die version. I
Good.
think it's going to be that.
I think
it's
that
going to
version.
be. I think it's going to be the A&M guy because it is. And the thing is I think Marcus is going to play into that. Like, we are not losing to this team that's trying to end this series. Like, we are not doing that, and we're not losing at home, and we are not going because they've already lost at home, to A&M, which I know Marcus did not like, right? And none of us did. And so I think he's going to play that up. Like, I think it's going to be a thing where we're not losing at home to this team. We are not going to, like, if this is the last time, we are not going to be the team that loses on our home field for the last time in this series or whatever it might be. And you also have that thing of like, oh yeah, your season will end also. Like, he is going to be as amped up as he's been all year, in my opinion. I mean, I didn't think he was super crazy against Texas A&M. Not that he needed to be. That wasn't. The team was plenty fired up, obviously, but I think this is going to be a different. It's going to be noticeable. People are going to notice it.
I'm getting hyped up right now. All right, before we let you go, give me your prediction for Saturday.
Oh, you're kissing me. It's Tuesday?
Yeah, this is coming out on Thursday, so people hear this a little bit closer.
Oh, it's coming out on Thursday.
Yeah.
All right. So let's pretend it's Thursday. Oh man, I think it's going to be close. I do. I
agree.
It's just interesting. I've predicted Notre Dame to give up 24 and 27 points the last 2 weeks, and they've given up 7 and 7. So I've been wrong about this defense, and so maybe I'll just continue the trend. I think Notre Dame's going to win 38-34. I think Notre Dame is going to. I think it's going to be back and forth. I think it'll be closer to A&M than everything else. But I do think Notre Dame, because of the changes they've made on defense, the plays that they could not make against A&M, they will make against USC, and they'll ultimately win the game.
So as we sit here today, I'm predicting Notre Dame to win 35-31. I do think it's going to be close. I think that USC has what it takes to score on this defense, and I'm sure that they found some stuff back when Notre Dame was, just getting cut through by Texas A&M, that Lincoln Riley's going to have some stuff up his sleeve that's going to lead to points. But I just feel like USC's not going to be able to stop Notre Dame for 60 minutes, and that's going to be enough. However, if this forecast continues to get worse and there's a little bit more rain, there's a little bit more wind, I really think that's going to affect USC more so than Notre Dame. So let's say the weather is a factor. I'm going to have an alternative score prediction and say Notre Dame wins that one 28-14. But if conditions are fair, all things created equal here, I like Notre Dame 35-31. So we're pretty close on this.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Be sure to check out Greg Flammang and another friend of the show, Dame-USC, on their show Hit and Hustle for Irish Sports Daily. It's certainly one of my favorites. And Greg, thanks as always for the time, brother. Try to enjoy the game on Saturday. I know it's going to be a lot on you, as it will be for me and so many other people watching and listening. But it's going to be fun, man. I can't wait.
All right, Tyler.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks again for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow along wherever you get your podcast and leave a 5-star rating and review. I'm going to be back here tomorrow with a mailbag episode to get you all set before kickoff between Notre Dame and USC. I'll see you then.